All right. So Deontay Wilder calls out Dillian Whyte if he cannot get the Tyson Fury fight next. And he said that he is more than willing to give Dillian Whyte the whooping he's been waiting on. He also shares a lot of other information on a podcast with Brian Custer. I forget the name of Brian Custer's podcast, but you know the podcast. It's growing. It's a really good podcast. The best interview of these fighters going on in the internet, I believe. Easy. Brian Custer is a real professional, and Deontay Wilder answered questions for him. And I got to tell you, or I'm going to keep telling you exactly why I have so much respect for Deontay Wilder. Let's talk about what he had to say about Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury, and the rest in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, woke up this morning, whole bunch of people sent me the interview that Deontay Wilder did on Brian Custer's podcast. Excellent podcast. Definitely subscribe to Brian Custer and watch all of his podcasting interviews that he does with the fighters. Excellent interviews. This one was no different, but this one, he got Deontay Wilder to answer a great question. He said, look, if the fight with Tyson Fury does not go, who do you want to fight next? And Deontay Wilder, he was sounding like he was joking, but at the same time, the name came right off the top of his head. He said, Dillian Whyte. I want Dillian Whyte. He said that Dillian Whyte had been acting like a man fan of his for a long time. He acts like we're some estranged, like we used to be in a relationship or something, and we're estranged from one another. Like I just had I ain't even gonna say what he said, but it was absolutely hilarious, right? And he says, yeah, man, I would love to fight this dude and knock this dude out. He said he's not gonna wait on Tyson Fury. He's got Tyson Fury, he's going through the mediation and the arbitration. And, I do believe he gave this interview before he heard what Bob Arum had said on IFL TV yesterday about the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight happening and pretty much being him being open to it in February or March. I think it was a little bit before he had heard that, but anyway, he talks about Dillian Whyte and he says that he wants Dillian Whyte. Now, first things first about Dillian Whyte. Okay, don't believe for anything that Dillian Whyte's going to fight Deontay Wilder. He's not going to do it. He didn't want to do it when he was saying, I've been the mandatory for 1,000 days, 9 million days. Dude, he didn't want it then because he had an opportunity to fight Deontay Wilder as a voluntary. All he had to do was fight Luis Ortiz or fight Dominic Brazil, who those are fights that the WBC ordered, and Dillian Whyte didn't take that fight. Dillian Whyte is definitely not going to take the Deontay Wilder fight coming off of getting his head spun by Alexander Povetkin. So, no, man, that's just absolutely positively not going to fly, dude. He's no way that he's going to do that. Okay. No way he's going to do that. And I don't think anybody thinks that he's going to do it. However, Deontay Wilder's saying that he's willing to do it. Let's see if they're willing to set that fight up. I mean, I think that's a better fight than Alexander Povetkin and Deontay Wilder. And shoot, hey, how about Deontay Wilder and Alexander Povetkin, provided you get the proper drug tests, right? It's amazing how many people that have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs are still being considered for major championship fights, including Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte, and Alexander Povetkin. So here's the thing. Just the simple fact that I mentioned those guys should tell you how ridiculous it is that people think that people are not, something's wrong with Deontay Wilder for saying that there's cheating in boxing, right? When you're talking about his next fights being either the drug cheat Tyson Fury, the drug cheat Dillian Whyte, or maybe the drug cheat that beat the drug cheat Dillian Whyte in the drug cheat Alexander Povetkin. And it goes on and on. Maybe he should have a fight with Huey Fury instead. And so that's another Nandroloner that Deontay Wilder can get into the ring with. This is like all of these dudes have been caught with performance-enhancing drugs and cheating in some way, but yet boxing analysts and commentators act as if cheating doesn't happen in boxing. Now, though, Brian Custer did ask Deontay Wilder about that, and let me make a little bit of a statement about that. I have so much respect for Deontay Wilder because he is so honest, completely honest, and you gotta love it. Now, in the questions that he was asking for Brian Custer, he did finesse it a little bit. He did move questions away from things that where he could have got embroiled in an argument where he couldn't have necessarily proven it right there. Like when Brian Custer asked him about, do you really believe Mark Breland poisoned your water? Deontay Wilder said, look, man, aside from the water thing, I told the dude not to do XYZ. He did XYZ, and that's it. Okay, I'm firing him for that. I have suspicions about the water, but whatever, I can fire him for this and that alone because there was a plan in place that if I get in trouble, do not throw in the towel. He said Mark Breland did not talk to him, did not warn him that he was going to throw in the towel, none of that. He just threw it in. He didn't say, hey, Deontay, you got to show me something. You got to show me something or I'm going to throw this towel in. He didn't say that to Deontay. He just threw in the towel. And then he also talked about how he got on JD's because Brian Custer, like I said, he's asking the tough questions. He's asking the questions that the trolls ask. I was impressed by it. And he said, well, what about JD's? Don't you think JD should have seen the gloves? Then Deontay Wilder went in and ethered JD's. And he said, absolutely, absolutely. I got in JD's ears. Did you not touch those gloves? How come? And JD said that he never actually touched them. He never put his hands on the glove. He looked at the glove and let the glove go. He didn't touch the glove, didn't squeeze the glove to check where the padding was in the glove. And he said that was an oversight of JD's. There was an oversight of JD's. And he said that that's never going to happen with JD's again. And if it did happen with JD's again, where he's not checking the gloves, he's going to get rid of JD's because he's the boss. But he said JD's, that was an oversight on JD's. They didn't specifically discuss that. It's not a situation where Deontay Wilder said, hey, Jay, when you go check these gloves, I want to make sure you put your hands and you squeeze the top of the gloves to make sure that padding is stable, right? And that it's not going to move around and it's not flattened or already worn in. And he said JD's missed it. And the next time if JD misses something like that, JD's won't be around anymore. But they never had that specific discussion with JD's. They had that specific discussion with JD's and Mark Breland about throwing in the towel. And that was the reason for the different treatment of JD's and Mark Breland. And that, my friend, sounds completely and utterly reasonable. Completely reasonable. But there's something else, if you listen to that interview, that you will hear from Deontay Wilder, that you will not hear from Bob Arum. And I challenge you to do this. Bob Arum was interviewed with somebody on IFL TV yesterday. And in that interview, he talked about what the path forward was for Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. And he talked about what he believed the contract was expired and all of that. I want you to do this. Count them times he says He keeps saying he keeps cutting himself off, he keeps moving around, swiveling around, because Bob Arum's lying, okay? And he keeps saying so he can keep his lies straight while he's talking. I want you to, on the other hand, go listen to Deontay Wilder when Deontay Wilder's talking about those gloves and talking about how he felt in the ring. He said that he said that this guy that people overheard something he said about the helmet being heavy and they misrepresented that. But listen to what he said about how his body was feeling. Listen to him. And you tell me that guy is not telling the truth. We all know when people are just sitting there. We don't always know when people are lying, but we know when people sound like they're telling the truth and when people actually believe what they're saying. Dude, there is so much overwhelming proof about those gloves being shady. Deontay Wilder even asked Brian Custer, Brian, have you ever seen any gloves look like that before? And Brian Custer was like, no. He's like, no. Now, couldn't even get around it. No, never seen any gloves that look like that. And also, there are other officials from different boxing organizations, and I won't say their name, but shout out to the people that shared the information. There are people in all the sanctioning bodies that know Tyson Fury cheated. The only question was, hey, there's not enough evidence right there to overturn the fight. But everybody knows he cheated. The question was, did it arise to the point where it's so obvious that you have to overturn the fight? And they're saying no in that regard. But Deontay Wilder has the explanation for that. You can't overturn that fight with all of that money that people bought in tickets and all of the gambling and the money people lost betting on Tyson Fury. How are you going to, if you admit that, then you got to give those people their money back. And they are not interested in doing that, so they will continue to protect Tyson Fury. But I want to just give a huge shout out to Deontay Wilder because my understanding is that he listens to the videos. Man, that is some courage you're showing at a young age. A lot of people think that because he's 33, 34, that he's an old man or something. He's not, dude. 34, 35 years old, you're still adjusting into your manhood. You are still learning things. You are still growing as an individual. That's how it works. And a lot of people don't realize that till you get to be 50, that, yeah, man, I still had a lot of growing to do at 33 and 35. But the maturity and the self-assuredness and the honesty that Deontay Wilder's showing through this circumstance, dude, that should be nothing but applauded. It should not be attacked. It should not be ridiculed. This is a guy that is saying somebody did me wrong. I'm telling you he did me wrong. I'm not ashamed of telling people that somebody did me wrong. I'm not ashamed or I'm not afraid of whatever you're going to say about me because the truth is the truth is the truth. And at the end of the day, or in about 5 years, 10 years, when all this is done, that's when they're going to look back on Deontay Wilder and they're going to be like, Tyson Fury cheated his behind off. That ain't no real win. He cheated. And that's how Tyson Fury is going to be remembered. And Deontay Wilder is going to be remembered as the guy that got cheated. And there are a bunch of people in boxing history that their name have carried on because people know that they were mistreated and know that the powers that be in boxing and the cheating opponents next to them couldn't beat them, so they cheated them. But the rest of the fanhood recognized it and give these guys their respect. But anyway, shout out to Deontay Wilder. Excellent interview with Brian Custer. I absolutely hope he gets the Tyson Fury fight first, and then he knocks out Dillian Whyte because, wow, what a 2021 that would be. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the channel. That's what I think about the matter. You give me your opinion in the comment section. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm out. Peace.